Welcome to Just Thinking Out Loud. My name is Desi-Rae. Are you aware that diversity initiatives across the United States and possibly elsewhere in the world that are federally funded and mandated for federal employees are not just about already questionable bias sensitivity training for you to keep your job, but also aim to target your children as young as 3, you heard that right, 3 years old. One specific training is called Difficult Conversations About Race and calls on WHITE white employees at the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the National Credit Union Administration to pledge allyship amid the George Floyd tragedy. Fun fact, you might want to check out my series on the Gulag Archipelago to find out the origins of the term allyship. As outlined and publicized by Christopher Rufo on Twitter and on his website, I always put links in the description, the stated goal is to convert everyone in the federal government to anti-racism, and it begins as young as their children, because children become racist at 3 years old. I'm making this video today because I am absolutely horrified at the prospect of getting into the brains of 3-year-olds to tell them how bad they are and how hopeless their future in the world is. I'm going to share my initial reaction to learning about this. If you didn't know about this program and you were not aware, now you are. This is unacceptable. Do something about it. Say no. Oh my God. What am I doing? That very much upsets me. I actually read through everything, but it wasn't until I reached the tweet about kids that I got really upset, because I never realized that this is how far they wanted to go, and if someone tells you they want to do something, they're probably going to try and do it. So at the end of this training session that they're trying to give all government employees in the end, they ask employees to talk to their children about race because children become racist around 3 years old. I'll read the quote. One of the most important anti-racist, they spelled racist wrong, actions you can take regardless of your identity is to talk to your children about race. Bias begins to take shape in our brains around 3 years old. Having parents or caregivers begin to positively language identity groups, I don't know if they meant identify groups, other than the child's, bad grammar, and reframe stereotypes that are found in books, media, and in own actions. Together, we need to do the hard work of talking about racism, race, inequities, and prejudice so that our younger generations have a model for their own understanding and one to carry into adulthood. Thankfully, there are many resources available today to support us in this action. The reason I got so upset is because when you're 3 years old, you do not yet understand the world. You're getting all this communication, primarily through your caregivers, from not just verbal, about how things work. You don't have bias. And if these people are telling you how to perceive the world, that means you're going to be adopting this mental model and you may never break out of it. And that's the thing that worries me. It's also so obviously projection. You know, you come to the US, at least for me, you come to the US and you hear people complain about how the world is out to get them. And if you see the world that way, you're going to act like that in the world because you've positioned yourself in a certain way in your environment. And so you're going to act out the beliefs that you have in your head. And if you never take the time to examine your beliefs, how are you going to break free of that? And that is so disturbing to me. It's so disturbing because I've mentioned this before. I don't have these like racial issues, but I do understand the mechanisms and the patterns. So I might not feel in any way inferior, say, about my race, but I might feel inferior about something else because those are things that I struggled with growing up. So I understand not the beliefs that people have because it just doesn't make sense to me, but I do understand how it plays out in people's lives. And so it's super disturbing to me that they're trying to tell white kids about how shameful and bad they are for contributing to racism in the world, and then they're also trying to tell non-white kids, but of course especially black kids, because that's what people always mean when they say non-white, that everybody's out to get them. I try to believe that people have good intentions, but kids already don't have bias. You don't need to introduce these thoughts into their heads. If they're not viewed to see the world in a racialized way, then you don't have to worry about this. You probably have to worry about other things, like other kinds of stereotypes, but if you're trying to positively identify groups, there are a couple of things wrong with that. The first thing is that a person is actually a full human being who is not just good. So you have to give people not just positive attributes in your head, but you know, they're talking about stereotypes. It's stereotyping someone to put them only in a good light and not see them as committing both good and evil. Like, as a full human being, you're multiple things. You're not just this positive thing. And then the other side of that is, it's more than a couple things, it's three things. The other side of that is that if you're focusing on positively identifying one group, then automatically you're negatively identifying one group, and that's not good either. And then the third thing is that you're teaching people to use these traits, to see these traits as important, and that is a projection that I'm talking about. These are people who see these traits as important, and yeah, it doesn't really bother me that they do. Like, I'm not getting into their wacko theories about how the world works. I mean, like, it's just a mental model. It's probably useful. It probably helps them navigate life. We all have our mental models about how things work. The point is that they're trying to get to 3-year-olds in order to project that into their brains when they don't yet know how to reject that. And they can't really know how, because that's where they're getting all their love and support and affection from, which is an absolute necessity when you're 3 years old. So you can't possibly, not even logically, but in any way, shape, or form, reject that mental model of the world. And my worry is that these kids will never be able to break out of these mental prisons. And so I thought about 3 specific kids when I started getting upset and started thinking about it. I first thought about that girl whose mother was humiliating her on social media. There's obviously probably more wrong there, as in all these cases. This is just like the way it manifests. And she had her draw about how she has white privilege, and she was basically shaming her for being, I don't know, 3 years old and just learning about how the world works from all the people around her. And then I also thought about that girl who, the no justice, no peace girl, who was super angry and marching for Black Lives Matter. And it's like, she cannot understand that. I don't know how old that girl was. She could be 8, she could be 10. She cannot fully understand what she's preaching out there. And then I also thought about that boy, I forget his name, but I did a video on it, whose mom wanted him to identify as transgender because he had just one time mentioned it, and she even wanted him to get, I think, either hormones or puberty blockers for him. And the dad was so upset and only got his case heard because the mom was given the benefit of the doubt because he went on social media. And it was obviously like these 2 parents not agreeing, and then the child is just a pawn who is like struggling between like trying to please one of his parents. So like, those 3 kids were the ones that I thought of when I heard about this. All of this is very upsetting to me, as you may see. I think it's okay if people have their ideas about the world, but when I heard about this, and it's like the government the government has a lot of power, and if they're trying to tell everyone to do this, it's like, it really upsets me. It really upsets me. I think it's wrong, and I just hope that these kids grow up one day and have the tools to re-examine their beliefs. Like I said, I think these models of the world can actually be useful. I think they're wrong, this specific one, but it's just like for them to one day actually examine it and think maybe this is not right. And I think it's difficult to do that when you're being given this model, when you can't there's no way for you to reject it as a kid. I think people are seriously missing some of the moral gems in stories like Voldemort and Harry Potter and King Herod and Jesus, where they're trying to like eliminate something, like, and they're not thinking. They just totally flew past their heads. Thank you for watching. Please support the channel at justthinkingoutloud.tv/donate. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments below. This was an emotional topic for me. Subscribe if you're new to my channel. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. I always kind of ask you guys to reflect on what I'm talking about, because I think these are very deep issues. Like the racism one, the racism aspect of it, it's just a manifestation. Like this could come out to play in different ways, but you're basically telling someone it's wrong to be them when they haven't even really done anything in the world yet. Like they're already bad. And I think it's also just not useful. It's just racists. Completely racist people who first and foremost see race. You know, I saw a video of someone that I follow on Twitter who I don't agree with at all, who's like all about this racist stuff, but I follow because I try and follow people who don't necessarily agree with me. Sometimes interest me. And they were posting this video of this like little black kid and this little white kid like holding hands or something and walking on the street, and they were like celebrating it. But the thing I realized is that they can only celebrate it through heavily identifying the fact that they're black and white, and then that they're joining together. And to me, you don't even need to be like seeing everything through that racial lens in the first place. And to me, that's actually not being racist. Not just like positive affirmation of race. I don't think positive affirmation of race is bad, to be clear, but it's like it can only happen when we're primarily identifying people through this way, and then that's success. And like that's just not how my brain works. Like I don't think you need to like have your friend super acknowledge your blackness and your whiteness and then you can be friends. And I know a lot of people in the US in particular see the world that way, and I don't see the world that way at all, and it's quite annoying. So I think this is going at the end. Thank you so much for watching. I think it's very helpful for me to talk about things when I'm kind of worked up about them, because I always hope that somehow I have a positive influence in the world the way things are going. I know everyone thinks that they're having a positive influence, but I think it too.